I'm president of Collingwood for YouTube. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to review episode 1 of Gilligan's Island, which is entitled Two on a Raft, which includes some sharks underneath. I had actually never seen the very first episode of Gilligan's Island, so this was new for me. I'd seen the colored episodes. I've never seen the black and white.
Joel, it's episodes of color.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
that's the proper.
That's wrong.
Oh, well, this was the episode I saw was in black and white. Sorry, on Tube.
Don't use that term anymore.
Oh my God. Anyway, yeah. So
there was a pilot preceding this one, which is quite interesting, actually, to compare.
Yeah, it's got a different cast, it's got slightly different characters. It's got George Plimpton as Gilligan and John Houseman as the skipper.
Alan Howell Jr. does a really good job of playing the skipper. Bob Denver playing Gilligan. And obviously there's the famous theme song everybody knows about they're getting a 3-hour tour, and they wake up on the beach. Gilligan and the skipper doing, hey, what are we going to tell him? And well, they tell him the truth. I mean, what do they tell? And this is where you meet the cast of characters: Professor, Ginger, Mary Ann, the Howells, Mr. and Mrs. Howell. So when did you guys first watch the very first episode of Gilligan's Island? Patrick?
First watched the very first episode of Gilligan's Island. Well, it was hot in syndication when I was first aware of television, but it was not this episode. It was probably sometime when I was 4. And I wasn't probably aware that it was the pilot for GI. It was just
because they show them out of sequence all the time in syndication.
Out of sequence, or you're 4. I mean, and you have a black and white TV, and so they're all in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just another episode of Gilligan's Island, as far as I was concerned. The original pilot was deemed too intellectual by the executives at NBC. And so they, Gene Roddenberry went back and remade this as Where No Castaway Has Gone Before.
It's true.
More action. They took out the Telosians, torturing the skipper to see who he would mate with. So, all of those things were changed, and it was a bigger success.
And of course, Roddenberry cast himself in the lead so that he could hang out with the Telosian women. So
yeah, clearly.
Alan, when did you first see the first episode?
This episode I couldn't tell you when I first saw it, but I can tell you when I first saw Gilligan's Island, about 1965.
That's great. In its initial run. It was on the air.
Yeah. Used to watch it on CBS. We were CBS people at night. ABC people during the day. I used to watch all the game shows and all that stuff before Dark Shadows actually came on. The Chuck Barris stuff, that was just starting out in 65, 66. But this show was definitely a first run for me, as was like Green Acres in the latter part of this, right after this run, actually. Green Acres was a big deal. The Beverly Hillbillies was a CBS show. We watched that all the time. So that was all part of this milieu. Andy Griffith, they were all CBS.
The 60s, such a golden era.
It was for television. I mean, half-hour sitcoms were king at night. There were a ton of them. There was also a lot of great what were referred to back then as ETV shows, which educational television before it became PBS. Tons of cool stuff. I remember watching Leonard Bernstein's concerts for young people and his specials that he would put on, where he would analyze music, including one where he analyzed rock music, which you can find on YouTube. which is very interesting because he's not entirely dismissive of it. He really likes some of the stuff that was being done at that time. But yeah, I remember seeing the pilot and probably watched the first episode around the same time back in the. I wasn't aware of the pilot until the 90s, the original pilot.
Yeah, Ted Turner got all of that stuff and started. That's when he colorized the first season.
That's right.
And occasionally he would do a Gilligan night on TBS or something, and they would drag out the John Bridgman pilot then.
Yeah, and it is. It's a very interesting contrast, Joel. You should definitely watch it and check it out. It's you can see the developmental stuff that was, either discarded or taken in a different direction.
It's funny because it really challenges Sherwood Schwartz's narrative of always having sold this as a social microcosm, because the professor is not nearly as professory, and the two women are just two women.
They don't contrast experiences at all. Yeah, they're just kind of like two buddies kind of thing. Yeah.
But Sherwood Schwartz had a master's in something. It was either English or it might have even been organic chemistry or something. But he was an incredibly bright
smart man. Yes, very smart man. And very erudite in describing the show in later years too. When they finally got him on tape for the one of those interviews that they did for Academy of Television, all of that stuff.
Yeah, like Live Forever. I mean, sure, died just a few years ago.
Yes, that's true. He was sort of on that same scale as Norman Lear in terms of his longevity in the television business and in life in general. Massively successful producer, and you can see why. I mean, this stuff just as it developed, it just had this massive appeal.
He was also a very prolific producer, though, and most of the stuff that he created didn't really go to air or didn't last for a long time.
He's a pilot king. He was a pilot.
Yeah. So I think it was by virtue. He was not only bright, but he was also very prolific. So you throw that much stuff at a wall, you're going to get a Brady Bunch. You're going to get a Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also this is when I noticed in this particular pilot is some things were established really quickly once they decided this was going to work, this wasn't going to work, and the whole shtick between the skipper and Gilligan. All of those things that, the reactions between them, the relationship between them.
And amazing how it gelled that
fast. I mean, it was just there once they, and that whole sort of Laurel and Hardy thing that they do in this first episode that continues on. And of course, Alan Hale Jr. was a kid during that era. He probably met them, more than once. Because his father was in films and big in films in the 30s and 40s. But he even does that Oliver Hardy thing where he does that thing, I mean, he's just there's definitely some rub off there from experience through and I think that that Alan Hale Jr. had done maybe some light comedy, but he'd never done anything this broad, I don't think, before. He was actually known for playing heavies as
a Western actor. Yeah. And I think he rode to the pilot on horseback, or rode to the audition on horseback.
Because the audition took place on location. They had to go and find him, and yeah, that is true.
What a hell of a story.
They sent him a script initially, and then they had to go and I think they went on horseback is what happened, down to give him a script. And then he flew in for the audition into Hollywood and then back onto location because he was working. So they had to have him. It's one of those things where they just went out of their way to try to get him because he was working.
Yeah, a movie he's in that's very familiar. It's called Hannum High.
Yeah,
he's one of the people that hang Clint Eastwood.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Or as I like to refer to as Hannum High, High Plains Drifter, and Pale Rider, the Angel of Death trilogy.
Yeah, it very much is. That's it's very interesting. Russell Johnson had a career in science fiction movies and guest starring on dramas and things like that.
Did 2 Twilight Zones.
Mm-hmm.
I first saw Gilligan's Island when it was on TBS in color. I didn't see the pilot, but I saw the other, like I'd say season 2, probably.
Yeah.
Mainly in season 3. I didn't see much of season 1, and then it was played.
Color ones seem to run in heavier rotation. The season 2 and 3 seem to run in heavier rotation in syndication, probably because they were in color.
Well, and they're better.
Yeah.
The show is a show
production value. Yeah.
Gets better and better. By the 3rd season, almost every episode's a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah. This episode, though, I agree with you guys. It's really good. The chemistry between Bob Denver and Alan Howe is there.
Yeah,
definitely for sure.
Yeah.
My wife was watching this with me, and she goes, Gilligan's gonna drown with the anchor in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, it's just broad sight gag humor, but within that context, there is a relationship there that's, and you're right, it becomes more complex, it gets better, it gets all of those things, and all of the various characters get their own stuff to do as time goes on, and the characters get richer, and even within the context of here they go again, there's all this other stuff going on. So.
You do get a bit of a hint that they are going to get that with this episode, with the Professor booby trapping the cave.
Yeah.
Which was really smart, nice to see. The girls, very, very beautiful women, and very talented actresses. I always liked the house. They always crack me up.
Well, Jim Backus was a legend alone, but then he's paired with Broadway actress Natalie Schaffner, who had a venerable career, largely on stage.
Yeah.
And is kind of playing the same part she played in 1939 in the Pulitzer winner Time of Your Life.
Yes, she played these sort of sophisticated character types, high society types. By the time she was on this show, she was already in her 60s, although she refused to allow anyone to ask her what her age was. But she was already in her 60s, and she auditioned for the pilot because they were going to do some location shots in Hawaii and thought it was going to be a great free vacation, and the show was probably not going to go anywhere. And of course, she ended up not only doing the 3 seasons, but also doing the reunion specials.
That's remarkable. And when you look at the opening credits, if you look very carefully, you can see a flag at half-mast, because they were shooting it the day after Kennedy was shot.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And they heard about it while they were in production. Yeah. Yeah, there's a story about the Dick Van Dyke Show, too, where they were in production for one of their episodes when they heard about it.
I remember watching, I think it was after Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. I remember watching syndication, Mr. Rogers, they talked about assassination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 68 was a terrible year for that stuff, and obviously. But, Fred Rogers talked about anything that he thought that kids would be curious about or afraid of, or any of that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, what are your thoughts on the bamboo eating sharks?
These motorized little plastic sharks. They were having a good time, and they did it. They shot that really well. I thought they kept it relatively high speed, so it was it's just about what are they going to do? How are they going to get through? Get through this whole thing. They didn't try to make it into anything really scary.
No.
It was more ridiculous.
Although I thought about taking this sequence and turning the dialogue down and putting on the Indianapolis speech from Jaws. Seeing how that would play.
Yeah.
I'll never wear a life vest again. 500 men went into the water.
Yeah.
That would be funny as hell.
You hear the sound of a Narragansett can crushing.
Yeah.
Every time the shark bites into the boat.
The eyes roll over white.
That's right. And the head screaming and the splashing. Like eyes.
The head bobbing in the water.
Yeah, they do a really good job with the sharks, the motorized sharks. It was very, very funny with the paddles. The paddle comes off instantly. And then taking apart Gilligan and the skipper taking apart the raft to have weapons and stuff. And they nail this.
It's a sight gag progression, and it's well done for what it is. It's impeccable. It's exactly the kind of thing you would do, and and crazy things happen in threes. So you get the paddles bitten off, you get the boat destroyed, and then the thunder and lightning come. It's just total disaster, but funny.
Yeah. Patrick, what did you think of the shark sequence?
It's fun. It's fun, and it establishes it's one of those things, because Schwartz had to do it a little bit at a time, that establishes why they can't get off the island. Because there are logical questions that come up, and people usually don't associate Gilligan's Island with answering logical questions, but it does. So you've got that, and I think maybe the next episode or two, they try to rescue the minnow by coating it with a special glue, but the glue contracts and it causes all of the boards that comprise the hull of the minnow to pop off.
Yeah.
And so when people say, "Oh, the professor couldn't fix a 2-foot hole in a boat," well, that's not what he was dealing with.
Right.
It's in the opening credits that they have that, and that's obviously a flashback.
Yeah.
So in a very subtle way. They also established the mythology of the other side of the island, which I always look at as a metaphor more than anything else, or that the village is on the other side of the island. I also wondered about that.
Right.
That's what they discover is the village from The Prisoner. You've got, native tribes, around that probably don't like their presence, and or perhaps even on the island. The dangerous cave system on the island. And there are a lot of dynamics that they set up here that would play in the background for the rest of the episodes. And Schwartz, I think, was very clever with that.
Yeah, and the lagoon starts to become very central as well, which was a flooded parking lot. They made it, and they would just redo it every season. And apparently they preserved it after the show went off the air for like another 25 years or something. Yeah. Well, they knocked it down. So they actually made it a permanent part of the back lot after the show became successful.
Yeah. Apparently it was just awful.
Stunk.
It was just not awful to get into.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine this stale, brackish water kind of standing there for months at a time,
I imagine the writers being bribed by the actors to not write sequences involving the lagoon.
That's right. Take a pay cut. Take a pay cut.
Do you think they used any chlorine for the lagoon at all?
Probably not.
Oh,
no. By the end of production of every year, it probably stunk pretty.
I think they drained it, refilled it, but that was an annual thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Literally, the first couple seasons, it was a parking lot during when they weren't shooting. They used it as parking lot. So,
but the first episodes really are a lot of logical housekeeping issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they build a hut, but it's a communal hut, and that doesn't work out because of, you know, Gilligan and Skipper's lovemaking. So
That's
they
right.
end up, you know, splitting it into all of the separate
Barracks.
huts. Yeah, so people can get some sleep.
Girls over here, and the professor like had his own place. He was the anomaly. Everybody else paired up, but not the professor.
Oh, the professor paired up. He just somebody every night
with the Maruvi. Yes.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene from this episode?
I really enjoyed when they established one of the things that they establish in this thing is that the Howells always misapprehend what other people are saying or talking about because they are in their own freaking world.
Yeah.
You know, the world of stocks and bonds and golf and all of that sort of thing. So that was kind of funny. And it also seeing Howell with his putter made out of a bamboo stick and a freaking seashell, that's really establishing something that goes on and becomes more and more extreme at times as a gag.
At a point, they get a car.
Yeah,
Gilligan,
that's right. They make a car out of bamboo.
Around.
Oh my God.
That's another thing. All the things that the professor tries to get them to build and invent and do all these wonderful things. It always fails because, and it's not because they're lovable losers. They're not morons or anything. Well, Gilligan kind of is, but they're lovable losers. They can't seem to make anything work the way that it should work, or it works that way, but then it's put into a different context where it gets torn apart by a storm or something. All of this thing, and yet the radio like works for 3 years, no problem. So, you know, coconut batteries. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know,
the professor was able to recharge the batteries.
Yes.
Favorite scene, Patrick, in this episode?
Oh, you know, there were times, if you go back and look at the daybook, where I would sort of intimate that I would be just as happy writing Gilligan's Island daybook. And I often go back to that idea, except there'd be an even smaller audience for that. But the show means a lot to me on a lot of levels. I mean, if we do more episodes, I'll get further into it.
We're going to.
But it's an extremely significant show. I like shows about a few characters kind of stuck together dealing with something. Star Trek in its own way is that. Dark Shadows is that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Gilligan's Island is the king of that. Lost in Space has that quality.
Another CBS show.
Yeah, The News, of course. But so I take it oddly seriously in weird moments, and I look for what I think of as iconic moments that could have come straight out of a straight television show or moment. And really, even though this is low-hanging fruit, the very first scene where Grumpy wakes up,
right,
and he's shocked to find that he's still alive and that he's there. There's a complete realism. There's a very straight lack of shtick in that.
Yeah.
And you see them kind of asleep on the deck, and you wonder, gosh, did they wind up on the island, realize they were safe, and then just go to sleep on the boat, or what, you know? And I'm just that if you're keen on Gilligan's Island, as I am, because I can probably talk about this show as much as anything. It's certainly as much as Dark Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
There is something just mythological to that moment, that you're seeing something important to the mythology of Gilligan's Island for the first time.
Right.
And I love that. It's a moment of realism.
Yeah.
I really like how Gilligan gets to receipt everybody by the end of this episode as dressing up as one of the tribe members,
Sure.
wearing the mask.
He's very lucky he wasn't stoned to death.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where Gilligan's really tempting fate. The professor had not invented some sort of, small bamboo blowgun or something like that to take him out. But, and speaks of an intelligence on Gilligan's part, a resourcefulness on Gilligan's part to, fashion this costume. And
a streak of mischief.
God, yes. I mean,
sustain him as well, because the action is actually something of a non sequitur, but he just sells the heck out of it. I mean, just there it is. That's who Gilligan is, So.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to add about this episode before we get on out of here?
It's great. My advice is that if we continue down the Gilliganic road, just start with the beginning of the third season.
Okay.
That's really just start with the show at its strongest.
It's where the writing and the situations start to peak,
and the politics are strongest too.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys want to do tomorrow? Anything?
Well, there's lots that we could do. I mean, we could continue exploring this. There's a movie I keep almost suggesting, and then somebody else has another idea, and so I've stopped short of it. There's a movie called Walk Hard.
Oh yeah, that's a great.
Which
movie.
I think's a marvelous satire.
It is. It is actually way better than people thought it was when it came out.
It is.
Yeah.
I just watched the Weird Al Yankovic movie the other night, which was very good, and it reminded me of Walk Hard in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Do you have access to it?
Oh, the Dewey Cox story?
Yes, that's it.
Can you get Cox? Can you get Cox in time?
It's always important to be timely with Cox.
Hold on. I'm checking.
If you search the internet long enough, you should be able to find Cox.
The whole screen just went dark.
Let's see. Walk Hard.
I can't say it.
Archive.org. Because that's not good. See.
Okay, I found it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Is it an hour and 36 minutes long?
Yeah. Is it free? No?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, cool. All right.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
All right. Link to Pat. So tomorrow night, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. I've never seen this.
You'll like it. It's funny. It's a parody of early rock and roll and Johnny Cash and all that whole milieu and a lot more.
It's like a version. It's basically like Blues Brothers in a sense.
Even more parodic.
Okay. Yeah, much more.
Okay. Okay. Because I've seen both Blues Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook about is going to be in the description box. Pick that up if you haven't already. Link to Alan Gallant's YouTube channel, Colin Sport After Dark, is going to be in the description box. See you tomorrow night, guys.
All right.
Go.